story that we're going to hear today, that we heard already in the readings, is such a wonderful word of hope. And it's also a reminder to us, each and everywhere we go, and no matter what our circumstances are, that no matter what other people tell you, that life will go smooth for you after you come to the Lord. And these people that tell you life is going to be great if you become a pastor or a spokesperson, speak the word of God, speak the good news, everything's going to be good, everything's going to be fine. That's just a lie. And it reminds me of that. It reminds me to tell you that the truth of the story is this, that no matter what happens to you, good or bad or indifferent, challenging or not, sick or well, tired or weary or energetic and alive, no matter what happens to you, God goes with it through you and goes through it with you while you're going through it. It gives you the strength and makes you better and makes you stronger as you go through it. And that's the truth. That's the truth of this story. And that's the truth of our lives. And if you look back over it, you'll have to say it's true. So I hope today that we hear a word of hope, where we hear a model of hope from one who was hopeless, one who was living in hopelessness, complete hopelessness, one who was so tired and so weary that all he could do was lay his head down and go to sleep. One that was so exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that he just wanted to give up and die because he had no hope for tomorrow. But it was one who through God had the power to hope, and it was one whose hope would lead him through the valley of despair itself, and that was Elijah. When Elijah said, "It is enough, O Lord. Take my life," he said. "Take my life. For I am no better than my fathers. I'm too tired, God. I'm too hurt, God. I'm too defeated, God. Take my life." There he was in the wilderness, in the valley of despair. But we remember that it hadn't been long, just days, before that Elijah was on the mountaintop. That he was on the mountaintop of Carmel. And there he had great victory over the prophets of Baal. There he showed the mighty works of God before all the congregation of Israel. Everything was great upon that mountain. He was victorious, not defeated. He had energy and power, and he was not in despair and in fatigue. And God's power was sufficient for him on that mountain to do all that overcoming that he did. But what he had to learn was that God's strength and God's power was going to be adequate for him in the hour of his greatest need, as well as the time of his greatest power. And so Elijah lay under the broom tree, lifeless. And we hear that in that place where he can't do anything but sleep, here comes an angel. And the angel of God reaches out and touches Elijah and touches his shoulder and says, "Wake up, Elijah. Take this nourishment. I've brought you a cake. Take this sweet bread and eat it. And drink this fresh, clean water, for you're going to need your strength." It says that Elijah arose and he ate and he drank and he goes back to sleep. And a little while later the angel wakes him up, lets him rest because he needs it. And he wakes him up. And he says, "Elijah, wake up because you need this nourishment. You need this bread. You need this water. So you'll have the strength to sustain the next road, the next few links of the journey." So Elijah receives nourishment. Elijah receives comfort. Elijah receives rest from an angel of God. You know, I think it's kind of like us sometimes, and I know it's like me. When you are faced with challenges and things, sometimes, especially when you feel like you've kind of reached the end of your energy rope, your age rope, what you're supposed to be doing when you're going to be nearly 60 like me, or even when you've reached the end of it in any kind of way, you feel like, and one more thing comes up, and you go, how am I going to do this? I'm tired. I'm hurting. I just don't have anything left to give. What do we do when we face that kind of an energy challenge that's not at the gas pump, when it's that personal energy challenge? And we say, how am I going to do this? How can I do it? Where will the strength come from? But the thing of it is that when crisis comes, through the power of God, the strength will come as well. After we wonder and wonder where it comes from, it happens. It just comes. We've seen this in news reports, have you not? Have you heard of this before? Whenever there's a crisis or an accident, sometimes people have physical strength that they've never been able to exhibit before in their life. We have a music teacher at our school, and she has to walk with. She walks worse than I do, you know. I mean, she has a lot of arthritis, and she's older, and she has a lot of trouble. And as kids are, a lot of times, sometimes they help teachers that aren't very strong move things in groups. You know, a little group of little kids will come and they'll carry books, or they'll move something. There's a couple of little boys, and they discovered those pianos would roll, you know. And they got to rolling too fast, and then they couldn't stop it. It rolled over the top and stopped on one of them's foot. But amazingly enough, that music teacher walked over and she picked up that piano and took it off that child's foot. How did she get the strength to do that when she could barely walk down the hall? Somehow or another, she got the strength to do that. It hadn't been but about a year or 2 years ago that Doris and I were leaving this church, and we went up on that big ramp that goes 635 east. You know how that thing goes straight up like a mountain on a curve like that? And there was a little couple, it was a little bitty short man and a young lady probably in her early 20s. And there they were right on that curve where the cars come, and there was a motorcycle. And it stopped. And I had my little pick-em-up truck, you know, and Blanca, that's what I call my truck, and Doris and I were coming up on the top of that hill, and we got out and said, y'all want to get in the truck and let us take you down to safety? This is a very dangerous spot. And the guy said, no, I need to stay here with the motorcycle. And you can take her, but you need to, I said, no, it's not safe, son. You need to come. And I said, well, we can get this motorcycle on the back of this truck. And he goes, oh, no, ma'am. He said, it weighs 500 pounds. And I said, oh, if we all work together, we can get it done. I don't know, it just didn't register. All I could think about was getting those kids off that bridge. And you know, he and I picked up that motorcycle and got it on that truck. And girls and boys, and ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I cannot pick up anything over 35 pounds. And he was littler than me and a lot lightweight, and he was like, and he got up on that truck. And we closed it, and he got up in the back of the truck, and she got in the truck, and we got them safely. In fact, we got them all the way back to their apartment. And then when we got there, we rolled that thing on. And he looked at me. Of course, I fell down when it came down because the weight of it hit me. And wow. And we still don't know how that happened, but I do, because I believe there were angels there. I believe there were angels helping lift that motorcycle, because I believe them. Scripture says they were there. They did. He looked at me and said, well, I won't say exactly the words. He said, but you must be some kind of angel. And I went, no. I'm not, but I think we had angels that helped us. And we got them there safely. Sometimes strength comes, not in a supernatural way, but sometimes it just comes like a well from within us bubbling up. But you know, this kind of strength also comes to us not only physically, but mentally. And our wheels get still, and we're able to focus and do things mentally that we weren't able to do with God's strength. And also, it applies to us spiritually. There's a story that I stole off the internet. I'm going to read this one to you. There was a missionary, and she was from the United States, and she was single and on her own, and on her way to be a missionary in China. And she rode on a ship, and she was going across the ocean. The closer she got to China, the less adequate she felt to do the job. And she kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do this. I don't know if I need to turn around and go back, or if I don't need to go on. I'm scared. I'm so scared. And the story goes that she lay down and she went to sleep. And while she was sleeping, she had a dream. And in the dream, she was standing on rough water in the middle of the ocean on a 2x4. And you know a 2x4 is not very big. You can't even put both of your feet together on unless you have awfully tiny feet. And you have to stand like you're surfing on a 2x4. Can you imagine? I can't even sit on a surfboard and float. Can you? And she was standing there on a 2x4 in her dream. And God said, walk to China. And she's like, I can't walk to China. I'm standing on a 2x4 here in the middle of the ocean. And God said, take this step. Take the step. Walk to China. And she took a step. When she came to the edge of the board, another board appeared in her dream. And then the next board appeared. And the next board appeared. And the next board appeared. And in her dream, came the word to her spirit that God had called her to China. And that if God had called her to do something, that she was going to have the power and the ability to do it. Because God was going to give her that. And she did. And she was very successful. She went forward to China. And that was the assurance and the hope and the strength that she got through the power of that dream. And so today we can claim that hope for ourselves. That no matter what we've been through, no matter what comes our way, that whatever we face, God is going to go with us. Going to go with us through that. And God is going to be not only present in our moment today, that God was not only present in our times in the past, but that God goes with us into the future. And so God is not only a God of hope for the past, God is not only a hope for now, but God is our hope for the future. Just as sure as God went for the nation of Israel, with that pillar of flame by night and that cloud by day, just as sure as God walked before Abraham, God walks before you and I. After Elijah was fed the food, the very food of faith and comfort, and angels came physically to attend him, you'd think that would have been enough, wouldn't you? But it wasn't. Where did Elijah go in the story? He went into a cave. And there Elijah wept. And he cried. And who made a noise and a wind so that something that would pull Elijah out of that cave? Who was that? It was God, wasn't it? And Elijah came out of that cave because that wind, God is a teacher. Sometimes God has to get our attention with no other kinds of noise in our life. And then God whispers to Elijah in the cave. God hears his tears. God is concerned with Elijah. And God asks Elijah, why are you here? Why are you here? And God wept with Elijah in the cave of his hurt, in the cave of his fear. God wept with him. Because God is one who weeps with us. And God suffers with us in the midst of our tragedies. And then God goes even further. God takes the pieces of our lives. We talked about that last week. And puts them back together. And then God calls Elijah down and says, go now and anoint a new king. Because there's going to be something new. And there's going to be something different. The things that you are afraid of are going to be no more. It reminds me of a little story that was written by John Claypool. You know, many times before a holiday, kindergarten teachers, which I've been one for a long time, help the children make a gift for their parents. And this little child made a gift of clay. and it had already dried. Teacher helped the little child wrap the gift, and he was on his way out to the car. And as he carried the gift out to the car, he tripped, and the little clay vessel broke into a million pieces. And the little child began to weep and weep and weep because he wouldn't have a Christmas present to give his parents. His mom and dad picked him up in the car, and his dad said, "Oh, son, it's all right. It doesn't matter. Quit crying. It'll be all right." But his mother said, "Yes, it does matter." And she went out and she helped him pick up the pieces and the wrapping paper, and she gathered her son up in her arms, and she held him and she began to cry with him. And when all the tears were gone, she said, "Now," she said, "let's go home. Let's go see what we can do together. You and I, we'll put it back together again." And that's what God does for us, you see. God weeps with us and calls us to work with God, to put things back together, whatever our circumstances, our lives, our income-producing ability, our relationships, our heartache, our physical health. He said, "Come on, let's put this back together, you and I." That's how it works. And it's the essence of our hope as people who are people of faith, is to remember that. Because you see, in the gospel lesson today, in our New Testament study today, Jesus says to everyone there, "I am the bread. I am the bread of life." In fact, he says, "I am the broken bread. And I will be the bread of life to come. I'm the bread of life now, and I will be the bread of life for you in your future." He said earlier, at a woman sitting in a well in the middle of the day, he said, "I am the water. That you drink of me, you will never be thirsty again." Jesus said to us in his stories, "I am the bread. I am the source of strength for you. I am the living water that keeps you moving." He is the living water in the jar of life. He is the broken bread that is the life of heaven to come. He has come down to earth. He has come to give us not only life in our present, but life in our future. A home and a life where there's no fatigue, where there's no despair, where every tear will be wiped from our eyes and every hurt will be healed. And we will know and experience the most exquisite love that we can even imagine how wonderful that it will be. And even now, in our life today, we know that this same one was broken for us, suffered for us and with us, and holds us and weeps with us. And one day will wipe every tear away. May that be so for you and for me this